We confront the relentless hunger of the will by deconstructing the futility of material pursuit through Schopenhauer's uncompromising lens. We must expose how every satisfied desire merely births a new void, imprisoning existence in a pendulum between pain and boredom. Only through aesthetic contemplation and ascetic detachment do we finally manage to break this glass. Most people believe that fulfilling their dreams is the key to lasting happiness, but philosophy suggests that getting what you want is, in fact, the quickest path to unhappiness. We are programmed for incessant desire, turning our lives into a frantic race toward a finish line that doesn't exist. It is time to look into Schopenhauer's mirror and see the solution right before our eyes. We live in an age of excess, where the soul often feels exhausted from chasing horizons that recede with every step. Schopenhauer, the philosopher who dared to look into the shadow of existence, offers us a map to understand why, even when we have so much, we still feel that something essential is missing. Prepare yourself for a journey of conscious awakening, where the goal is not to acquire more, but to free yourself from the need to possess. Our modern culture, in its hyper-consumerist face, is the most visceral manifestation of what Schopenhauer called the will. For him, the will is not a conscious desire, but a blind, insatiable, and universal force that pulses through everything that exists. Imagine a motor that never shuts off, a thirst that renews itself the moment water touches the lips. In the digital economy of 2026, this force has gained new allies, algorithms designed to exploit our dopamine circuits, keeping us in a perpetual state of becoming, always about to be happy, but never truly being so. We need to face the counterintuitive truth that we are not the masters of our own desires. Most of the time, we are servants to an evolutionary and metaphysical impulse that never intended for us to reach full satisfaction. Understanding this is the first step toward presence and reconnecting with what is real. If the will is a tyrannical master, recognizing its nature is our first glimmer of freedom. For once we understand that this internal engine never shuts off, we begin to realize that the finish line we chase so hard is, in fact, a mirage projected by our own minds. It is this insatiable force that places us on a hedonic treadmill, where every great achievement or possession quickly loses its luster, returning us to a state of indifference and revealing that the target of our search always shifts as soon as we reach it. Modern psychology confirms what philosophy already announced through the concept of the hedonic treadmill. Every great achievement, every indispensable purchase, every step climbed on the social ladder returns us, in a short time, to the same previous state of indifference. It is the phenomenon of the pendulum of existence. Our lives swing violently between the acute pain of not having what we want and the empty apathy of boredom when the goal is finally achieved. Look for a moment at the item you desired most this past year. Where is the glow it promised? Often, the void emerges immediately after the acquisition, revealing that happiness was not in the object, but in the brief interruption of desire it provided. This search for a non-existent finish line is what fragments our inner wisdom. Schopenhauer reminds us that satisfaction is merely the starting point for new suffering or unbearable boredom. Recognizing this cycle is not an invitation to pessimism, but to emotional lucidity. When we stop believing that the next step will save us, we can finally begin to inhabit the now with kindness and inner silence. But this silence only becomes fertile when we have the courage to face the naked truth, using disillusionment not as an end, but as the mirror that reveals our self-deception. To break the cycle, it takes courage to look into the mirror of disillusionment. This is not a mirror that reflects our vain image, but a tool of radical honesty that forces us to see our material pursuits as a repetitive cycle of self-deception. In the heart of 2026, we face a mental health crisis fueled by algorithmic envy and the filtered perfection of social media, where the will of others becomes the standard for our own lack. The mirror shows us that we are trying to fill an infinite abyss with finite things. All healing, as we say here, begins with the acceptance of what hurts, and the pain of realizing the futility of our pursuits is the beginning of our inner transformation. By deconstructing the illusion that happiness is an accumulation, we begin to feel the fertile void, that sacred space where the soul can finally breathe without the pressure of wanting something in return. It is a painful but necessary transition, moving from the perception of the problem toward the search for an emergency exit that removes us, even if temporarily, from the tyranny of the will. There is a place where wanting falls silent and beauty takes control, a sacred interval we call the aesthetic refuge. Schopenhauer believed that art, music, and nature are not just entertainment, but Sabbaths of the will. They function as an emergency exit where we can experience pure and objective contemplation. When you lose yourself in a masterpiece or let yourself be absorbed by the immensity of a natural landscape, the cycle of desire is momentarily interrupted. In that instant, the I that wants, that needs, that judges, and that suffers is removed from the equation. You cease to be a servant of the will to become a pure subject of knowledge. These moments of profound beauty provide the model for a life lived outside the frantic rush of the material market. The contemplation of nature, as a living expression of the sacred, teaches us that life has its own rhythm that does not depend on our approval or possession. It is in the silence of a melody or the stillness of a mountain that we find the rest that no material object could ever give us. This aesthetic pause is the rehearsal for real detachment. Yet, these brief moments of beauty are actually seeds for a greater state, the invitation to transform fleeting contemplation into a definitive path of detachment and conscious freedom. The final stage of this journey is what Schopenhauer calls the ascetic path, but which we propose here as a conscious and sophisticated detachment. It is not about suffering or punishment, but an elegant refusal to participate in a rigged game of consumption and dissatisfaction. To break the cycle, we need practical strategies, identifying impulses guided by the blind will and deliberately choosing intentional stillness. It is the practice of recognizing the desire, but not becoming it. When you choose voluntary simplicity, you are not losing anything, you are gaining yourself. The liberating realization that breaking the mirror of desire is the only way to reach unshakable inner peace changes everything. You stop running after the light to become the lamp lit in your own darkness. This is the path of the soul, a road that winds to teach us gentleness and to show us that the meaning of life is not in what we achieve, but in the depth of our presence before the mystery of existence. Often, the emptiness you feel when turning off the lights is not a lack, but the fertile void, the sacred space where the soul finally breathes without the urgency to be something else. If existence has been this tiring pendulum between wanting and boredom, perhaps the invitation is simply to stop the movement and inhabit the center. You are not broken for feeling that the material world is no longer enough. You are in a process of refinement, learning to distinguish the noise of possessions from the silent melody of your own being. May Schopenhauer's mirror no longer be a place of pain, but the starting point where you find the courage to let go of what weighs you down and embrace what is essential. In this silence that now takes shape, experience the weight of your body and the gentleness of your breath. There is nothing to seek right now, no horizon to chase, only pure observation. It is in the recognition of this silent completeness, here and now, that the glass finally breaks. Today, at the end of this video, I invite you to sit in silence for 3 minutes. Seek nothing, plan nothing. Just observe the impulse to want to think of something or do something, and let it pass like a cloud. Feel the fertile void in your chest and recognize that, at this exact moment, you are already complete. If this silence has found a home in your heart, perhaps it is the moment to allow this spiritual truth to continue to flourish. You are invited to walk with us, by subscribing and allowing this emotional safe harbor to remain present in your days through our reflections. What resonated in your consciousness today? Your sharing in the comments may be the light that illuminates the path of another seeker. And so that this frequency of peace is not interrupted, the video suggested in the card. may be the natural next step of this journey of reconnection. Peace and light.